Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, which is now called Make Stuff Do More instead of Nobody Else Has My Name. Today we have my daughter Luna sitting in with us.
Hi everybody.
She just wanted to sit in because she wants to be part of the videos. So today what we're going to be doing is upgrading the motors in this drone that I built back in 2017. So this drone, after 7 years of service, it's now 2024. These motors are basically trashed. It still flies really well, but it's so noisy and the battery doesn't hold up like it used to. So you want to grab the new motors that we got for it. So we're going to be popping in these T-Motor 7500 kV 1104s. They're going to be replacing the 5000 kV 1105s that I put on this 7 years ago. Look how pretty they are too. It's sad that they wore out. The new ones are blue. They're still going to look cool, but not as cool, right? So the new ones should go a lot faster. Hopefully they're more efficient than these, or the same. So maybe I can get back to having like a 10-minute flight time. We don't know yet. I almost left out all the studio upgrades. Yeah. So hey, also to my 82 subscribers, thank you so much for subscribing. I have upgraded all of my studio behind us, my whole workbench area. We repainted all of it, gave it some pretty lights, and I got all new recording stuff and equipment in here. So hooray. So, what do you say we jump right into this and upgrade this drone, huh? Let's go.
Let's go.
Okay, so we have the drone on the bench here now, and I'm a little bit embarrassed because, as you can see, these are 6000 kV motors, not 5000 kV motors. That's okay though. We're still going to be changing them, and the first thing we're going to have to do is remove the props. These things have been on here so long that the screws have actually rusted. Okay. And now that we have a drone without props, the first thing we should do here is unsolder them from the ESC board. Okay, we'll start by getting some flux on here, some solder flux, and we have our iron set at 350 degrees Celsius. And it looks like that does the trick. Okay. So there's two motors unsoldered from the ESC board. We'll spin her around. This side presents a bit of a special challenge compared to the other side because we have this plug right here. So we'll go ahead and get that unplugged so that we don't melt any wires. Hopefully nothing breaks and it just comes out. Now when I put this drone together, I did cover everything in several layers of a silicone conformal coating, so it makes things extra difficult. Okay, we'll go ahead and add some flux. And here we go. Wire number 3 right next to that capacitor. Okay. And so now we can go ahead and unscrew them and take them off. Wow. Now, it looks like our solder is still good. So we could basically reuse the solder and just add a little bit of new stuff, and I think we'll be good to go. So maybe we'll start with the easier side. So we'll get it mounted up in our vise again. Okay. When we mount the motors, we obviously need the pigtail of the motor facing down the arm of your frame. Okay, so we have our first motor mounted. This is how we're going to want our wires laid out. So we know we want to solder that wire down like that. So then we go ahead and chop off the excess wire. So we got our wire length that we need, and then we have to strip off just a little bit off of each of these wires. Okay, now I'm going to use my cheap wire strippers here that are meant for doing very small gauge wire. I got them set to 20 gauge wire. I'm just going to take a very small amount off of each of these wires. I'm pretty much taking the smallest amount that I can get away with here, but I can barely see what I'm doing because I'm recording this, which is okay. Since we got our wires stripped, we're gonna tin the tips of these wires. And by the way, I turned up the heat to 360 degrees to put these back on. And I just moved it up to 365 because it didn't go perfectly smooth. Now, there is the problem of the silicone conformal coating is on here, so I'm actually going to add some fresh solder to all of these pads. They need some fresh solder. Okay, so we got fresh solder. We'll get our first wire tacked down again. Wire number 2. We're going to give it that bend like that to try to get it to hold a shape. We got iron 365 degrees for this small solder pad that, even though it's small, it has a lot of heat sinking capabilities. And last one. And here we go. So that's our first one down. And 3 to go. Okay, we'll get our second motor mounted here now. Just put it off here. So here we are putting on the screws that T-Motor supplied with the motors. Okay, now let's get mounted back onto our little bench vise type thing here. Okay. going to tin our wires here. And that's going to help tremendously. We will add some solder to these pre-existing solder pads with solder already on them. But we want fresh, non-oxidized solder. So definitely that's the strategy. Chop your wires down to size, get them full of fresh solder, make sure you have enough flux in use. Try to pre-shape the wire. And I still have my iron at 365 degrees Celsius. And if the wires play well, they will let us tuck them in. Oh yeah. Just kind of mashing them right in there. The solder works its way into the wire wicks it through as you're soldering it. And so all this area here becomes rigid. And if it's too rigid and you're pushing on it too hard, you could get lucky and snap a solder pad right off. And then your ESC board is toast. So try not to do that. But check this out. 2 motors down. 2 to go. Awesome. Break time. Okay, so now we can move on to the third motor. I suppose we'll do this one that has a pad stuck onto it already. Now it's definitely easiest to put the screws in with tweezers and then get them screwed in. 100% way easy to put them in with tweezers, then screw them down. And do be sure that you use the correct screws. It comes with 2 different screws, and you want to use the short screws to mount the motor. Alright, now let's get the drone set up on our vise. So this is going to be the hardest one out of them all because of this. So we're going to start off just by getting some new solder onto those solder pads with some solder flux. Ooh, this one has a lot of solder on it already. Okay, so those pads are looking really good. Okay, same basic technique over here. Okay, same deal. Get this where you guys can see it. Last wire coming down. It's tough to see, but it's not going anywhere. Okay, with the third motor done here, we'll just kind of get these wires tucked in. This is really how you want them. Just seemingly a little bit too long. Because once you get them all tucked in and you get everything flattened down, you're going to find out they're just right. I think on the second motor that I did here, the wires are maybe a little bit short compared to what I would have liked to have had. That's okay though. So what we're going to do differently on this last motor is preemptively apply our new solder We already fluxed it earlier, so we're just going to add a little bit of new solder before we have those wires in the way, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get our last motor mounted up. And I still have the temperature at 365 degrees Celsius. Oh, look at that hot mess. It's turning into a mess in here. And that is okay. Okay, we have our TPU shock absorber. Does it work? I don't know. We'll just pretend like it does. Flip it around. Okay. Screws. Solid miss. Okay, let's try that again. TPU. Next up, motor. And insert screw. That looks about right. Okay. Okay, motor is mounted. We'll get it over here on the vise. First wire cut. Right about here. And now we have to strip just a little bit off the end of each wire. Two. Let's get some solder on those. Okay, now here we have a situation that is perfectly prepped for soldering. You see we have a nice bead on each of these wires. Look at that bead. And that's going to make it so easy to solder into place. So let's go ahead and start with this one here. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, that last one was very difficult. And also, it looks great. And that's that. Okay, so we have all of our motors soldered down. So all we have to do now is get this connector plugged back in. Piece of cake. And this drone, theoretically, if we were to put a battery in it and try to fly it, it probably would fly. But what we actually need to do is get everything reconfigured, because we just put brand new motors on it. We're going to update the ESCs. We're going to make sure that the motors are spinning in the correct direction. And we're also going to update our Betaflight software, which means we're probably going to have to reprogram everything. Okay, so now we're ready to flash our drone ESCs. So what we're going to do is come over here to escconfigurator.com and making sure that we have our drone plugged in and we can connect. Let's go ahead and hit the connect button here. As you can see, you'll want to turn off your radio and connect power to the ESCs. Once we plug it in, it's going to get obnoxious until we hit read settings. Once we've read our settings, we can see that here we're on BLHES 16.7. And I think we're going to want to update that to the Blue Jay firmware. We'll just select the latest one, and for our PWM frequency we're going to select 96 and flash, and that's going to go through and flash each one. Okay, and now that all 4 of them have flashed, we're going to want to select motors 1 and 4. We're going to want them to be reversed. So ESC1, ESC4. And we're going to write settings. Okay, now let's disconnect that. You can hear that it has all different tones now. Okay, so let's get out of the ESC configurator, and we'll open up our Betaflight configurator. Okay, now with our Betaflight configurator, first we're going to go ahead and connect, and we're going to come through and just take screenshots of all this stuff to make sure we can set it right back up the way that it was. Then we're going to come out here and update our firmware. Okay, I'm going to select the latest firmware for my flight controller, which is a DYS F4 Pro. I'm going to hit load firmware online, and I'm going to click flash firmware. Now I already did this, so I'm not going to do it again. After you do that, you will find that you have to reprogram everything. So go ahead and get everything reprogrammed, and then the critical task that we have to do is here in the Motors tab. And mind you, you don't have to update your whole drone. We can just come into the Motors tab and make sure that we're functioning correctly over here. So let's go ahead and do that. All we have to do here in the Motors tab is click I understand the risks. The propellers are removed. We can plug our battery in. And we want to make sure that each motor is spinning the correct direction. We selected reverse motors, so the props are rotating this way. And that does feel correct, so I'll go ahead and shut those down. And we can unplug our battery and disconnect. Okay, and now that we got the drone all configured, we can take it out for some test flights. We're going to try these new 1100 milliamp hour 2S batteries. Yes, that's 1100. And we're going to try these new 650 milliamp hour 3S batteries by Ministar. Now the first flight didn't go so well because I'm not used to so much power on this drone. And the resulting crash did get the electronics wet, which messed with my video just a little bit. But I did get a good flight out of it after that. And here I give it a real quick full throttle punch, and I'm very impressed with that power. So then I just fly it around, taking it easy, and see what kind of battery life we get. A 6-minute flight time on such a windy day seems really promising. Let's see how the 2S battery goes. With the 2S battery, I never actually did like a full throttle punch to see how fast it goes because it's just 2S. But I tell you what, I got over 9 minutes of flight time out of it. I did not realize that my goggles just kind of stopped recording after about 8 minutes. So you're just going to have to take my word that I went a whole minute after this video cut out. And so there it is, folks. She flies like a dream again. I can get a solid 9 minutes out of a battery, which is plenty enough. And it still looks really nice. If you're stuck around to the end, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and smash that like button. And I'll see you guys next time.